Hi everybody and welcome back to the channel. Now this week's video is all about close-up photography. It's an area of photography that is fun to do, it's quite easy and it's very rewarding, and also you don't have to go very far to take the pictures. In fact, all the pictures in this video were taken in my back garden. Now I call it close-up photography because a true macro photography is one-to-one life size and beyond, with higher magnifications, where we see a world that we can't see with the human eye. But I do think when you're getting that close in that you need to be shooting colour. I think colour is very important when we're getting close in, when we're photographing insects, etc., that we see that colour. It really makes those images work. But because we're shooting black and white, I don't feel we have to get in that close. So the lens that I'm using is a Pentax 100mm lens. It's classed as a macro lens because it's optimised to get in close, and if I added extension tubes I could get to one-to-one life size and beyond. But the lens only goes down to half life size, and that's enough, I think, when you're shooting black and white. You have to take a slightly different approach. When I'm working with the macro lens, I tend to be looking carefully at the composition, looking for shapes, textures, and just trying to get that depth of field just right. The cameras that I feel are the best for close-up photography are 35mm. If you use the correct or the right film and developer, you can get this lovely fine grain that still has that textural quality, and you get these lovely tones. The 35mm for me as well just hits the sweet spot for depth of field. You've got enough to play with, whereas if you're using medium format or large format, your depth of field is very, very narrow, so it's more difficult to do. The 35mm camera is just a more versatile camera for this type of photography. So I'm going to show you my setup, the camera that I use, and then load some film from the bulk loader, and then go out in the garden and take the pictures. But first of all, let me show the camera and the setup that I use for my close-up photography. So this is a camera, a 35mm film camera that I'm going to use to take the pictures. It's the Pentax LX. It's a true professional camera. It's modular. You can change virtually anything on this camera. The back of the camera can be changed. The focusing screens, which are there, you can change those. The actual viewfinders, eyepieces, can be changed to suit any situation. The camera also has an important feature that many cameras have nowadays, and that's the ability to lock the mirror up. So on this camera, if I wind it on, fire the shutter, I can actually feel a vibration through the camera. So if you're getting close in and using slow shutter speeds, it could result in blurry pictures. So with this camera, we press that button in, push that lever, and it locks the mirror up. So I'll fire it again, just listen to the sound. I couldn't feel any vibration. So it's important when doing macro photography to have a camera that you can lock the mirror up. The other thing that I like about this camera is that to preview the exposure in the viewfinder, you don't have to press the shutter release button. Now if you're using a cable release, it's very easy to trip the shutter. With this camera, we don't have to use that. There's a little button at this side, and when we press it, it lights up the LEDs and it'll give us the exposure that we're going to take the picture at. So that's still, you know, it's a little thing, but it makes all the difference. So all in all, a beautiful built camera and a pleasure to use. Now this camera, when you normally buy it, will come with this. It's the FA1W viewfinder. It's the all-purpose viewfinder. This one has a flash connector there. You can put that on the hot shoe there. And it's a great viewfinder for general photography. But the viewfinder that I would recommend is this one, is the FB1. This is what they call the FB1 Action Finder. Now this is great because it has a bayonet mount at the back, and you can put on different eyepieces. Now if I was doing one-to-one macro or greater magnifications, I'd probably use this one. This is the FD1. And this magnifies the scene, so it makes it easier to focus. And that connects onto the the action finder like that. So if you look at it on the camera, it would be like this. As you can see, it pushes the viewfinder away from the camera, makes it great for people, especially when they use glasses. But it just feels better being away from the camera back. But the problem with this is it's great for things that are at eye level or lower, but any higher, it's difficult to get your eye to that viewfinder. So the one that I would recommend is this one, is the FC1 viewfinder. This is it here. And as you can see, it's got a beautiful big eyepiece that you look through, and it gives a very clear view. And that connects to the action finder through a bayonet mount at the top there. You see the little red dot, and there's a red dot on this one. You just see that there, and you line up that two red dots and click it, and it's connected to the action finder. And it means when I mount it to the camera like that I've now got a waist level finder. So if I'm working at low down, it makes it a lot easier. And then if I'm working at eye level, I just turn it round, and I still get this lovely view. So it's a more versatile viewfinder to use, and it's a viewfinder that I use a lot for most types of photography. It just makes the camera more usable in a lot of situations. So that's the action finder with this rotating viewfinder here. Brilliant, the FC1. Now the lens that I'm going to take the pictures with is this one. It's the Pentax K mount 100mm macro lens. It's called a macro lens because it's optimised for close-up photography. I could use extension tubes to get closer, but as I say, I prefer not to get that close for black and white. And as you see, when I turn the focusing ring, the lens gets bigger and it's getting closer to the subject. And you can see there's numbers on the ring that tells you the magnification. And round about there, I'm at half life size. So it's a really great lens to use, and it's a great lens to use just for general purpose photography. You get this short telephoto effect, and it's really good, but it is optimised for close-up photography. Now if I mount the lens to the camera, another very important feature is the ability to be able to preview the depth of field. Now with this camera, the LX, again it's very simple. You use the same lever as you would for the mirror lockup, but you don't press a button there, you just push it forward, and as you can see, I'll stop the lens down, it stops the lens down. You can see the aperture changing, and that's great because the depth of field is very, very important for macro photography. So that's the camera, the setup that I use. I find it very, very easy to use and very enjoyable. So I'll get some film now into the bulk loader, and then we'll go take the pictures in the back garden. Because we're shooting black and white film, colour has no real bearing on the image itself, so I'm looking more for texture and shape, etc., and trying to get the composition right, the depth of field right, to make them interesting, the pictures in black and white. Now the first picture that I'm going to, or image I'm going to photograph, is of these yellow daisies. Now they're going to come up quite light in the photograph, so I'm just going to have to find a composition with the macro lens, and I'll preview the depth of field to make sure I've just got it right. I don't want too much to be in focus. I don't want to stop the lens down too far, as I say, I'll use the depth of field to check that. So I'm just going to have a look around and see what I'll come up with this, and I'll show you the camera setup for this first photograph. Right, so this is the first close-up I'm going to do, and it's this flower here. This is the preview of it, and what I'm trying to do, because we've no colour, is create a pleasing composition, something where we're getting this fall off in depth of field, and just basically because it's black and white, trying to create a more artistic effect. So I've got the central portion in focus, and I'm using the depth of field preview just to check that. That looks about right. So this central portion should be in focus, and then the rest go out of focus from the foreground and the background, and I think that might make a nice picture. So with the LX I'm going to use it on the auto meter. It's very good for that. I don't think there's anything to fool the meter there in terms of brightness entering the lens. And I'm going to lock the mirror up on this camera. Just press the button in and push that lever. The mirror's locked up now, and that'll stop any vibration, and then just wait for a lull in the wind to take the picture. And that's that one. I'll move on to the next subject. So this is the next picture I'm going to take. It's these stems. The flowers have gone off and it's left this lovely shape. Quite like it. And I'm focusing on these three petals, or heads as you might call them, and try and get these three into focus by using the depth of field, and we'll get this nice contrast hopefully against this dark holly bush. Now I've taken the exposure and it's 1/15 of a second at f8, so I'm getting quite a narrow depth of field. The lens is not at its closest focusing distance. You don't always have to do that. It's just about getting the composition right. And the next thing I'm going to do is lock the mirror up, and then just wait for a lull in the wind to take the picture. Don't know if you can see through there with the GoPro. No, it won't get that close, so just wait for a lull in the wind. This is the trouble with macro photography. Sometimes you're down to low exposures and any little shake can ruin the image. You can hear some people in the background, the blackberry. There's loads out at this time of year along the back of our house. So that's the second exposure. Move around now and see what else we can find. It's all great fun in the back of the garden. Don't have to go far to do this sort of photography. So for this picture, it's these berries. Some of them have gone now and some are still there. And what I'm trying with this is get the berry just in focus at the front, and then we get this leaf in the background out of focus. So it should create a nice shape, hopefully. The exposure on the camera is, let me just check it, the 1/60th of a second at 5.6, so we've got a very narrow depth of field on this. So again, lock the mirror up and then just wait for a lull in the wind to take the picture. So that's the third exposure. Keep having a look around, see what I can find. For this one, the lens was set nearly at its closest distance, which is half life size, so going to be really a narrow depth of field. I quite like the 100mm macro lens because you can get the 50mm ones are okay, they're great, but you have to get so much closer to the subject. This just allows you to keep back a little bit, and you also get this slight telephoto look to the image, and I prefer the 100mm to the 50mm. So I'm going to take a picture of this flower, an angle, and get these two buds in the background out of focus. And for this I'm going to turn the viewfinder, the LX, the FC1 viewfinder that way, and that makes it a lot easier for me to focus now. I don't have to kneel down. I've stopped the lens down to f5.6, and the exposure, if I just check on the camera, is 125 at f5.6, but because there's quite a bright area within the picture, I'm just going to increase the exposure slightly, so I'll probably give it 2/3 of a stop extra exposure for this. So again, lock the mirror up, and then just wait for a lull in the wind. Help if I wound the camera on. That's that one. Ooh, it's quite warm now. It's hard work, is this macro photography. Right. So just walking around the garden, I saw this gladioli head that's fallen off the plant. It's starting to go now, and I think it'll make a nice subject. It contrasts nice with the darker tone of the grass in the background. And I've focused on the stems there. I'm at f8. I won't have enough depth of field to get everything in focus, but I don't want that. I'm trying to create a more artistic effect. Because the plant is filling most of the viewfinder, as you can see here, I'm giving one extra stop of exposure to compensate for that, because all that bright light coming into lens will fool the LX meter. As good as it is, it will fool it. So I've given it an extra stop of exposure. So the actual exposure is 1/6 of a second at f8. So I'll lock the mirror up and then take the picture. This one isn't going to move. So that's that one. Lovely and warm now. So you don't always have to photograph flowers. This trunk that's been cut makes an interesting picture, as you can see in the viewfinder. The cross that's been cut into it sections it into 4 blocks. So we're looking for the texture of the wood in this, and I think it might make an interesting picture. So as you can see, I've got the camera set up like that. This is where this tripod comes in great. It's the KFC Concept K28 tripod, and it allows you to get over the top of subject, so it's brilliant, and it's quite secure with this camera. So take a light meter reading with the camera, see what we're coming up with, and it's telling me 1/8 of a second, no exposure compensation required. There's going to be no movement. So again, lock that mirror up, make sure the camera's wound on, and then take the picture. So that's that one. As I say, you don't always have to go for flowers, just look for texture as well. Can create some really nice black and white pictures. Quite like the petals, the way they hang down on this plant. I'm just going to focus on that one, and all the rest should be out of focus, and it'll just add a little bit of depth and just make it a more interesting picture rather than everything being in focus. So the mirror's locked up, the aperture I'm at f5.6, and the exposure is around about 1/75 of a second. So wait for a lull in the wind and then take the picture. Right, that's that one. One more shot left, and then that's it. Develop the film and see what we've got. The lights, sun's going down now, slowly, and before we know it, we're into September now. We're going to get these nights pulling in quicker by the week. So this is to show that photography is all about having fun as well. So I've just going to take a picture of this straw duck. I've stopped the aperture down to f8. The shutter speed's around about 125, and lock the mirror up, and then take the picture. See how it turns out. This is the view through the viewfinder. Just check to see if I have any more shots. Oh yes, I've got one more, so we'll carry on. I might as well use the film up. So I've just seen this tree stump, and I just love the textural quality in this, which really suits black and white photography. So I've set the lens down to f16 for this to get plenty of depth of field, and the shutter speed, let me just check, will be 1/4 of a second. So mirror locked up, wound on, and take the picture. So that was the last frame from the roll that I got out of the bulk loader. I hope you enjoyed those pictures. Nothing groundbreaking there, but at least it shows you a different area of photography that you can try to keep your interest in taking pictures. And you don't have to go far, as you've seen in this video. I took all these pictures in my back garden. Now, photography covers a very broad area of subjects that you can photograph, from the vast landscape right down to this micro world, which is at the domain of the insects. They see it, but it's very difficult for us to see it without using lenses that you can get in close. Now in this video I use this Pentax K-mount 105mm macro lens. This doesn't go to life size, it goes to half life size, but it's still a very nice lens. But as I say, you don't have to buy those. You can buy extension tubes for your your 50mm lens or your 80mm lens, and that will get you in closer to the subject and give you that macro photography at a lot lower price than buying a dedicated macro lens. Now, because I was shooting in black and white, it's sometimes more difficult to get interesting pictures, because with no colour being there, colour in macro photography really makes images pop. We're dealing with shades of grey, so you need to have a slightly different approach to it. You need to be looking for texture, a shape, working carefully with the depth of field on your camera, so you can control where the viewer is going to look at the picture, the sharper area in the picture, and don't worry about the other areas going out of focus, because it gives this lovely fall off in depth of field, and you get these lovely tones of grey. So it's just a different approach. It's not as easy as using colour, be it film or digital, but I hopefully in this video I've shown you that you can come up with interesting photographs just looking around and being careful with your composition, your depth of field, etc., and just finding these nice shapes. So I'll go get these negatives developed, although you've already seen the picture, so you know that it did work. As I say, I developed the FP4 in the Pentax HD, and I think it give it a nice textural quality in the grain and some nice tones in the pictures, so I was very pleased with that. Right, so if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up, a like, subscribe to my channel. If you have any questions, leave them below, and as I always say, stay safe, and I'll see you all in the next video.